So about 35 years ago, I had an abortion, and I was not able to say that or talk about it until 2 years ago. And I felt like it was my problem, and I was the only one that could deal with it. And a friend took me to a clinic, and I wasn't told that I can remember. I wasn't told about any other options, and I was focusing on what am I going to do? And I was in panic mode and in crisis mode. And so I had an abortion on this day, and the moment I did, I knew that it was the wrong thing to do. And I was not walking with the Lord at that time, but I knew. And so from that moment on, I feel like my life became reckless, and I made decisions that I look back on now that I'm shocked at my behavior. Just things that I chose to do, I would not do now. And then I met my husband, who's walking with the Lord, and he brought me back to God. And I started a relationship with Jesus. I made a conscious choice to get baptized as an adult, and that was the best day of my life. And I started getting involved with ministries and going through Bible studies and volunteering, and thought that I was doing all the right things. And I knew that I had sinned, but it was done. And then we moved here 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, one of my friends got up and she gave her testimony about having an abortion. And leading up to that, Pastor Josh had given a sermon, and something was starting to stir, and I didn't want to go there, and I knew what it was. So then I took a class that Pastor Mike was giving, because I realized everybody's talking about this relationship with Jesus, and I know I have a relationship with him, but there's a block, and I want that block to go away. So I took the class, and I thought that class would help me. And then I realized, no, this time when she's standing up there and I see information in our service bulletin about life choices, and I thought, okay, you're talking to me, Lord. I need to do something about this. So I made a phone call, and I started on the surrendering class that week. And it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, because I was so good at burying my secret, and I didn't have to deal with it. And I told my husband, and he was the first person I ever told that I had had an abortion. And he just loved on me, which was remarkable, because I thought that I would be judged. I didn't think he would love me, or wouldn't love me the same. And I had had broken relationships before that because I didn't think that I was worthy to have a relationship. Nobody could love me. How could somebody love me? How could God love me? So I started going through the class, and at the time I was going through BSF, Bible Study Fellowship. And by the first week, I knew that this was going to be so hard to do. So I asked for the women in my circle at BSF to pray for me, so I knew that I had people praying for me. I was able to tell them because I knew that I needed that prayer. And we told people in our couples study, so I knew that every week I had more people praying because this was so hard. And I think the hardest thing was going back and having to unravel everything that I was so good at protecting and not having to deal with. So I went through the class, and I realized, I think my biggest takeaway was that I can forgive myself. God has forgiven me. How amazing is that? Mm-hmm. I'm that sheep that he came after, and I don't forget that. And so knowing that he loved me unconditionally, that he's forgiven me, I've learned how to forgive others. I've learned how to forgive myself. And now I've taken the class 3 times, and because it's so much to learn about God's love and about myself and my past that I had to take it a second time. I wanted to know more. And then the 3rd time I took it because I wanted to help other women who were in the same position and they're not acknowledging it for whatever reason, to understand that there is forgiveness, and with that forgiveness, I feel that God's showing me how to be the woman that He designed me to be.
About 30 years ago, I had an abortion, and I was able to share. If somebody was to ask me, have you had an abortion? I was able to say, yeah, I've had one. But I think what happened is that not too long ago, the Lord began to work in my heart, and He wanted me to acknowledge what I had done. It was easy for me to tell someone I've had an abortion because basically I was acknowledging it in my head, and the Lord wanted me to acknowledge it in my heart. And that was I knew that was going to be a bit difficult, because as long as I kept my story and what I'd done in my head, it still wasn't real. And so when I was introduced to the Surrending the Secret class, I wanted to attend, and even then I still felt, okay, I can do this. I know what I've done, and I'll work through this. But what I didn't realize is how God was going to break me through the class. So God wanted me to acknowledge in my heart that I had come to a place where I could acknowledge what I had done in my heart, which is I had killed 2 babies. And once I realized, going through the class, coming to realization that I had actually killed my 2 babies, which I never wanted to get to that point of acknowledging my babies because that would hurt. The fact that I could say I've had an abortion was easy, but acknowledging I had killed 2 babies, that was hard. And through this class, it's confidential, and it's very cohesive, and you become sisters, and you're able to just share your heart, and you're able to cry out, and that's what the Lord wanted me to do. And even through the first few classes, I still was just acknowledging this in my head and still did not allow it to go into my heart. It was probably the 4th class when the Lord really dealt with me, and He wanted me to acknowledge what I had done, and I didn't want to really realize what I'd done. But when I did that, the healing that came was just, it's amazing. There's a freedom. There's a freedom, and I know my babies love me, and my babies know I love them, and I truly know now that the Lord has forgiven me. The Lord has forgiven me, but it took breaking me.
My story is similar to yours, Irene, in that 40 years ago, I was a young teenager and I found myself pregnant. It's really easy when you're not walking with the Lord to listen to what the world has to say about it, which is a bunch of lies. They convince you that it is okay to end the pregnancy, that if you do so, it'll be a secret. You don't have to tell anyone, you can put it out of your mind. They make it very easy, and at the time I was very vulnerable. I was 17. I was very scared, and I chose to make that decision and believe those lies, and I made an appointment and also had an abortion. So unlike what I was told, that it would be out of your mind, it would be a secret, no one would ever have to know about it, it was not true. They were lies, and it's a secret that I've carried for 40 years. About a year ago on Right to Life Sunday, a friend of mine got up and shared her story about how she had had an abortion, and I knew this person, and I was totally shocked. and in a way pleasantly surprised, because I knew her and she invited people to participate in the Bible study, Surrendering the Secret. So I knew her, and the fact that I knew her, I called her and I met with her the next day. And she shared her story and encouraged me to attend the Bible study, which I did. And as a result, I've been able to finally feel forgiven for something that I've carried around for a long time. For me, the biggest thing that it affected was that I felt very shameful, and I never felt like I was worthy of anything good. And it was a thorn in my side, and it was painful. It was just hard to live with it. So going to the Bible study the very first night I went, Janice was there, and I was scared. I was scared of what I was going to see, who was going to be there, am I going to know someone that was there? It was scary to me, and I've tried to find a lot of reasons to not go, but I did. And I walked in to someone's home that was very private. It was very warm, and the people there were absolutely amazing, and made it very comfortable for me to be able to start sharing my story. So during the course of the Bible study, it took me through probably the same process that you guys went through, and one of them is that I had to also admit what I had done, and there's no getting around it. I took a life that wasn't mine, and I had to call it what it was, and it hurts, and it still hurts, but it was the beginning of the healing process for me. And so after I admitted that, then I also, working through the Bible study, it gave me the ability to be able to fall in love with my baby. After I went through the process of falling in love with my baby, then the next thing was to be able to go through the grieving process of losing the baby, and then from that I could begin the healing. There was also a portion of the Bible study that talked about forgiveness, and I definitely had to work through a lot of processes about forgiveness, and there was 3 things. The first one was forgiving other people who were involved in the abortion or you felt like was involved at the time. And then there was forgiving yourself. And then the third part was to be able to receive God's forgiveness. And like you, it's like I knew, I was not a Christian at the time that I made the decision, but since then became a Christian, and I knew I was forgiven, but I did not know it here. There's a piece of me that really didn't believe it. And it's like it's something that was so shameful and so horrible, and it's something that there's a piece of me that thought God could never forget this. I took one of his children. And then because of all of that, I was able for the first time to actually really receive and understand the blessing that God gives us and the gift of forgiveness. And it's certainly not that I deserved it, but it's because it's a gift. And this is why Jesus came. He came so that we could be forgiven. And it's just a matter of us being able to receive that forgiveness and accept it. And since then, I don't carry shame anymore. I carry regrets, and I will forever. But instead of sitting here very shamed, I stand here feeling very forgiven. The takeaway message that I would like to share for people has to do with the people who are currently pregnant, and they're wondering what to do, or they might be in the same situation that we were in several years ago. And the message is that be careful what the world has to say for an option for you. Abortion is a billion-dollar medical business, and they're very good at convincing people that this is the right choice to make, and that you don't have to worry about it. Once you do it, it's going to be a secret. You can keep it out of your mind.
I would say if today yourself, or if you know somebody who has had an abortion, you don't have to be in bondage anymore. There's freedom and there's forgiveness, and that wall that you feel, it's a way of Jesus saying, I want to enter in that area. I want you to give me that too. I want that. I want true freedom. And just like we have experienced that freedom, it's for each lady who's listening today, that for whatever reason we made choices that were not good, but acknowledging it and taking it to our heart is what Jesus is asking us today.
My takeaway would be that there's hope, and that anyone that's sitting out there who has gone through what we've gone through doesn't need to be living in bondage. And there are tools to help you get through this. Of course, the Word is the first, that's the most important. But in going through this class, that it is freeing, and it will help you to become the woman that God designed you to be.